Hey there, everybody. It's Bill McDonald, the Reading and Writing Doctor. Welcome to our CREST online training. We're on part 2, and we're going to be working on the revision of a sentence. Whenever a question says, what is the best revision in sentence blank, all it means is they want you to make the sentence look better later than it does right now. That's overall revision, but when it only says revision, it's just saying take this content, don't add anything or remove anything, just change the order of the words, the organization of the words, so that's in a way that most makes the most sense. And so when we first did the part 2 for revising, we started at the word level and I showed you that video. So now we're going to go up that arm a little bit to the little bracelet that says move, order, revision. And I'll go ahead and show it to you on my document camera for some of you that don't have the graphic organizer in front of you. Here's the what I'm talking about. Um, we can organize the order. And so it kind of works hand in hand with this green one here, that you have this phrase or you have this sentence or you have one line. And if all you're doing is changing the order, you don't need to add any content. You don't need to remove anything. Just keep the content the same and just put the order words in order that makes sense. So if you have a puzzle, for example, if all you're doing is changing the puzzle pieces around you, they have to fit just perfectly so that each piece goes with a piece that complements it. For example, adjectives should work to add to nouns. Adverbs should add to the verbs. So the wheres and the whens should kind of be together when you do something and where you do something. And so you sort of play around the words in 80 ways until you get an order that makes sense. So I'm going to give you 3 examples using the order revision bracelet. So let's take you to the first one. And I want to start with uh, the 2018 test that this was not the 2018, that's one that I made that I feel like mine is even harder. I think it's going to be this one here. There we go. This was the 2018 test in 4th grade. And so um, just a couple of things that you can think about that when you're reading us, when you are doing my rules acronym, I understand that on the test itself, they're not allowing a lot of annotations, but they are allowing highlights, highlighters. You have a notes section. So if you can get the kids to have a step-by-step strategy that they're going to follow, either have them do it on lined paper, ask for lined paper all throughout the year, do it in the notes, or they can when they're reading, if they're not going to underline because they're not going to allow you to annotate with underlining, well, you can read for understanding. I need to understand the question by labeling certain things in the way that I highlight or the way that I take notes. Then you can still eliminate answer choices and you could select one of them. So when you see that, and I'll go ahead and think I want to Let me test this right here. What is the most effective revision? So if it says most effective revision, okay, I was trying that. I don't like that. It looks a little bit lighter. I'm just trying to find the best uh, looking. Let's see if this one works. Oh, that covers it up. I'm trying to find a good highlighting tool here in my program that I'm using. All right, let me try this one here. What is the oh, that wasn't, I just forgot to switch it. There it is. And there's the color I'm going to use. What is the most effective revision? Okay. So that means that there's usually a distractor that the kids can pick from. And the other thing that we're going to label is sentence 20. So in the notes or on their kids' paper, they're going to read, understand that we're doing the order because that's what the revision means, the structure. So we'll label that. And then once we are able to read the sentence 20 in the passage, we'll understand the changes that need to be made and we will label anything that we need to do there. We'll start to eliminate 3 of these choices and then select one for the submission of the answer document. So that's the order that we're going to go. So let's go ahead and go back to sentence 20. Oops. Click back to mouse. Sentence 20, there it is. All right. So if we are able to highlight, then let's do so here. Sentence 20, all the while, capital, all the while it was a regular kid he had been thinking of a story about. Okay. All the while is when. So if you, when you break the sentence apart, you can put little sort of like walls up. All the while, it was a regular kid. He had been thinking of a story about. Okay. Now, if I could move the he had been thinking piece of the puzzle over here after all the while, it might make more sense if I change the order over there to sound something like this. All the while, he had been thinking uh, of a story about a regular kid. So that seems to make sense. Now, when you see the phrase all the while, when you count the words, some people will say, well, since that's an introductory phrase, all the while, since it's a short phrase, you don't need a comma when it's just saying when. Usually when it's less than 4 words, commas are optional. So what I'm going to look for is something that tells me when, but then gets our subject in there, the boy who had been doing the thinking of a story about a regular kid. So that's my plan. So I'll clear my drawings and see which one sounds the closest to that in the answer choices. There we go. All the while, a regular kid had been thinking of a story. It wasn't the regular kid, it was the he, it was the kid who was writing a story, so it didn't make sense that way. All the while, see here, none of the commas are there because short introductory phrases are optional. All the while, when he had been thinking of a story about a regular kid. That's the one that sounds the closest between these two about of the ones that I want to pick. All the while, he had been thinking about a regular kid and a story. No, because the kid was the story. So we can't change the meaning. If it changes the meaning or the content, then you're going to eliminate those choices. All the while, when he had been thinking of a story, it was about a regular kid. Since that was an actual run on right there, you can't replace a sentence that has wrong structure or order or organization with a run on. And so your kids in their notes, and I'm going to do it right here next to it so you can know which ones I'm talking about. And we're just going to keep praying that TEA gets their act together and they fix their online program so that your students can annotate and take notes and highlight so that they can actually be doing real testing, taking strategies on the test instead of a separate piece of paper or in the notes or just highlights, because that's not really enough to work with. So, uh, so we've chosen our best answer. The one that was the best was the one that I was telling you about. So I would probably say that letter B is my best choice. The when, the subject he had been what he was doing. He was thinking. What was he thinking about? A story about who? A regular kid. So that's the one that makes the most sense there. I'll choose that one. So let me stop sharing this. My next one is going to be a fourth grade passage on page 568 that I tried to make similar. Now I want to do the fourth grade one first. There we go. Okay. This one, I'm going to be honest with you. The one from the test was easier than the one I'm going to show you here. So I figured I would go ahead and show you. And again, what you want to do is you want to make walls to separate each part uh, and sort of like break it down into puzzle pieces, because as you see again here, it says what is the most effective revision. So I'm trying to copy number 7 by choosing an answer choice that, let me move this out of the way so I can see what I'm doing here. All right. So it says, what is the, again, the most effective revision and to make in sentence 17. Okay. Now, when you look at the answer choices, since there's a correction on all 4, we know that there's something wrong with sentence 17. So something is wrong with the order of the words. So we'll go over there to sentence 17 and we'll write question 7 right there. That's yes, we know that we can't always annotate using a test, but I'm going to assume that we can at least highlight and that we're going to keep doing that until, so here's sentence 17. There it is right there. So it's kind of long. So we want to make sure that we have all this content in the question during meal times. So if I break down the sentence and put my walls of separation during meal times, oops, I gotta make sure I click on my wall drawing technique. That's the when, with their families, the who, comma, during mealtimes with their families, comma, instead of having conversations about the events of the day, sort of like a dependent clause, comma, many children will have headphones on and will keep their eyes at the dinner table. And it sounds like their eyes are literally at the dinner table, comma, on what is happening in their game. So I think what would have made more sense is if they were to keep their eyes on what is happening in their game, and that dinner table has to go in a different spot. So we want to keep all that content during meal times with their families. Instead of having conversations about the events of the day, many children will keep their headphones on and will keep their eyes on what is happening in their game. And so we have to figure out, where could I put this table? Since the table is a place, I could probably put during meal times with their families at the dinner table, or during meal times when with their families who at the dinner table, during meal times at the dinner table with their families, something like that. Put my where, my when, and my where together, and then the who. So let's see which one kind of does that, so that we can choose the one that's closest to what I was telling you. Here we go. During meal times at the table, period. If you don't make your kids verbalize the punctuation, they won't realize that the sentence stopped right there. So I cannot pick an answer that has a fragment. It's only telling me the when and the where, okay? And so you might have them, as they're working through the problem, physically write on their notes or on their paper, that's a when, and that is a where, right above what takes place during meal times, breaking it apart, at the dinner table. So there's the when, there's the where, and there's the who. Now, because we have a long enough phrase, because this is not a dependent clause, it's just a long introductory phrase. When you tell me the when, the where, and the who, we'll label that so you can see that the where, the when, and the who. So if you can assign just what I'm going to call the 6 or 7 W's, then it's going to help the kids understand a little bit more about the sentence. Many children, the subject of the sentence, are going to have their headphones on, one thing, and keep their eyes on what is happening in their game. So the two things they're doing is having their headphones on, wrong idea number one, and keeping their eyes on what is happening in their game instead of having conversations about the events of the day. So far, that's the one that makes the most sense. So we'll put a question mark there. During meal times, comma, many children who at the table where will have their headphones on, period. You don't usually want to end with a preposition. They will keep their eyes on what is happening in their game, period. Instead of having conversations about the events of the day, since that's just the opposite, that's not a sentence. Anything that's not a sentence, that's a fragment, you would eliminate it, and then you could write in your notes or on your paper that letter. You can put letter C, number 7 is a fragment, so we're going to eliminate it. So far, we've eliminated A and C. So what does that mean? That you can say, I've eliminated 2 of them. I've labeled in both places. I've understood in both places. I've read in both places. Uh, we're making the revision, changing the order. Let's try our last one. During meal times, wall, at the dinner table, where, with their families, who, instead of having conversations about the events of the day, period, that's the what, since we're the subject of the sentence is not even here, the children, it wouldn't make sense to have this part without the actual subject of the sentence that we need. Many children. So this is technically a fragment that you would eliminate. So the best answer is a sentence that says, join your W's, your where, your when, and your who with a comma. That's called an introductory phrase. Then you can have your subject followed by the compound predicate and compare it to what's not happening. So that's the best answer choice there is, we will say letter B is the one. Let me undo that. Just so that the kids can get used to seeing the color that most likely their submission will be black. And so that to me, even though the 4th grade one from the test was easier, I just wanted to challenge your kids because we have a lot of kids trying to understand revision. So change the order without changing the content or the meaning. We have one left that we want to do for this video just to practice this concept. And so that one is going to be called, Are You Smarter Than a High School Student? And so if your kids are not ready for the paragraph or passage level, then this revision passage from in the 560s is going to be a great one to start with, because you can practice the concepts without having to read an entire passage or a paragraph. So we can do it all right here. I don't like that. I want to make sure it's most highlighters. There's no suggested. There's no necessary color. So I'm going to, just for the fun of it, change it up this time. What is the most effective revision? Okay, so those are my keywords. Go green. That means change the order. And so the second that they see that, they should probably write order or the organization of the words, the phrases, so that it's in an order that makes sense. And then they will also use the phrase highlighted, sentence 13. So typically you go back to the passage and you would look for it. There it is right here. Capital, a single mistake. We'll practice the wall concept. What? By a student who could create a problem. What? When he goes through the process of matching his book answer to the corresponding letter choice. So we're comparing there that when he goes through a process, I will probably put a wall there. What is this process? Matching the book answer, what? To the letter choice, where? In the Scantron, that is disastrous. Now, since disastrous is an adjective, I don't think they're saying that the Scantron is disastrous. I need to remember that disastrous is a negative thing. So if I look and see, oh, a mistake is disastrous, a single mistake, a single disastrous mistake by a student could create a problem. Problems are also negative. So a mistake is negative. I'll do a down arrow. A problem is negative, another down arrow. So let's look and see which one is there. It's either a disastrous mistake or a disastrous problem because we want to describe the noun that's negative. A single mistake by a student could create a problem and the problem. The second that you hear repetition, like we just heard, I would probably suggest you go ahead and make what I call a red brick, that you don't want to say the same words twice. It would be like using the same piece of uh, puzzle in two different locations. So because of repetition, we're going to get rid of that one. And so in your notes or on your paper, you would write repetition. And when you write your A, B, C, D on your lined paper as the reason why we would get rid of A. We try B, a single mistake, what, by a student who could create a disastrous problem. Because remember, I told you the two negative things were the problem and the mistake. So that one does a good job of putting disastrous, that piece, one piece of the puzzle in a good location. Let's see if the rest makes sense. A single mistake by a student could create a disastrous problem when he goes through the process, a process of matching his book answer to what? The corresponding letter choice. Where is that letter choice? In the Scantron. Since all of that makes sense, I could probably say, yeah, I think I'm gonna go with this one. I like it. So I could put a question mark. Um, I could put, what else we got here? I could put a heart if I want to, because I like it. Let's see what's wrong with the other ones then if we're going to choose this one. So a single mistake, the what, by a student who could create a disastrous problem when he goes through the process of matching his book answer, when he goes through the process, what, of matching his book answer, period. Since there's an actual wall there, you got to make sure your kids see that period and say capital, because this last part right here is a fragment. Yes, if you read it without the punctuation, it'll sound very similar to the one that we're wanting to pick, letter B. You can see how it all ends the same, but you can't have a fragment. And so if you're going to label the reason why you're going to eliminate it, you would put somewhere in there as close as possible to it. You would write the reason why you're going to eliminate that choice in your notes or a note section or on the paper that you're going to use for your brainstorming. So we've got one more to eliminate, and that will be 3 practices changing the order of the words. So here we go. A single mistake by a student who could create a problem, a what, when he goes through the disastrous process. Since the process wasn't disastrous, a process of matching a book answer to a corresponding letter choice in the Scantron, that's not a negative thing. So we wouldn't want to use disastrous to describe the process, because that's a good thing. If you go through a process of saying, here's my book answers and here's my corresponding letter choices in the Scantron or in the testing document that we submit, then you're not going to use the word disasters to describe a process that is a good thing. Disasters is a negative opinion. So the only answer that makes sense there is going to be, we would probably say letter B, because we put a heart around it. And voila. So that's how to go about doing revision, changing the order of the words. And so if you look right below it on the arm, it says basically go phrase by phrase, line by line, and see what the content is. So you can check and see, do I just need to change the order? Do I need to remove a phrase, remove a certain line or a certain piece of the puzzle? Do I need to remove and replace one? So that way your students can be confident with what they're doing. So tune in next time. Our next revising will be combining sentences, taking two consecutives. What is the best way to combine sentence blank and blank? And we'll be remembering that song, Come Together Right Now. So thank you so much for watching. I look forward to seeing you soon. Just so that we can kind of finish revising this week, I'll do one every day for you guys, the ones that are watching them and keeping up. Appreciate all you guys that are watching and kind of telling me how it's going for you. I know that you're starting school again. Um, not your students, but most of you, but doing staff development. So you're having less time. So I was trying to give you a little bit of time to um, get yourself settled into your classroom so that we could make sure that we're able to focus on the CREST trainings. So just so that the ones that are ready now and you're kind of settled in for class, we'll kind of press forward now with the rest of the arm of revising and work our way up that, we'll call that arm ladder. And so that we can get into part 3, where we're going with the constructed type responses of the 10 basically different types that we could possibly see on the test. So bless you guys. Have a good evening.